Are so fortunate to be joined tonight by Lisa Mann, who Eitan mentions in his book in chapter 2. Lisa is a coach and deep canvasser with Changing the Conversation Together, which is also mentioned in the book. And so we are very appreciative of Lisa choosing to spend some time with us tonight. And so I'm going to allow her to introduce herself a little bit more, and then we'll get to the questions and answer part of our night. Go ahead, Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much, Wes and Jana, for inviting me to be here. It's very humbling. So just a little bit about me. I consider myself a regular citizen. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a mom. Until fairly recently, I owned a business with my husband. I now work for a city agency. I'm an architect. And I'm not sure about exactly who you all are on the call, but I know, like an awful lot of people in the country, I got active in late 2016. I have to admit that I was a bit complacent before that. I think, I want to keep it pretty short, and I'm really interested in hearing your questions and talking about changing the conversation together, or whatever you're interested in talking about. But I do want to say that when Eitan was asking, for people at CTC to talk to, I said okay, but I was deeply uncomfortable with it. But the reason I did it was I knew that it would hold me accountable. I was at a time when I was a little bit exhausted from my activism. I was a little bit burned out. I wasn't quite sure what was going to come next. And so what I want to say about this is that, thank you. This is one step in holding me accountable, is having me show up here tonight. So I'm happy to discuss whatever. I would love to be able to at some point share with you active initiatives, both with CTC and one other super exciting, very short-term project that somebody else mentioned in the book is undertaking right now. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, if you have questions for Lisa, again, you can put them in the chat. Otherwise, use that raise hand feature that I talked about. And I'm going to, as the co-host, I'm going to start off. So Lisa, you mentioned in your introduction just kind of feeling burned out and whatnot. And as someone who is engaging in politics to truly see real change happen, how do you take care of yourself? Because that's so important.
That's a great question. I don't always, but so I'd say the first thing I want to say in response to that is, I think finding the right match for your energies is actually what needs to happen before that. When I started deep canvassing, I felt compelled to do it. I also it terrified me, and I kind of always was nervous and felt a bit sick before I canvassed. But I got over that, and then it became this thing that actually energized me. So it was slightly less of a concern, and I feel like that match and not overextending yourself in the first place is really key. As far as taking care of myself, I just now have learned not to, to try not to overcommit. I've learned that it's okay to say no to some things. Exercise. Exercise is good for the body and soul. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jana, do you have a question that you wanted to lead off with?
Well, when you talk about feeling, I was the same. When you mentioned that you were complacent, I think is maybe the word that you used before 2016. I absolutely was in the same boat. I mean, I kind of paid attention. I know that he talks about political hobbyism, but last week I mentioned that I don't think I was even that before, because I wasn't really you know, I kind of paid attention to some news and stuff, but that was about it. And then the election 100% just blindsided me. I was one of those people who did not see it coming at all because, you know, I didn't look at all that stuff. And then, you know, I got involved because I was so horrified, you know, and you have all these emotions and all this energy, and I wanted to do something. I'm very interested in hearing more about the deep canvassing, the process, and how you even, you know, kind of get started on that. I'd like to hear about your organization more a little bit. I think it's fascinating. I've canvassed. The first time I literally, like a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, thought I would never, there's no way I would knock on a door, you know, that I won't. I'll do everything else. I am not, no, because I'm the person who hides from people when they come. I don't answer the door. I don't feel like I have to. It's my home. I'm not dealing with you. So I just assume everyone else feels the same way, and I'm bothering them and all that, and who's going to be there. And I was absolutely petrified when I started doing it. But I don't think I probably did it enough to get to a point where I really got over the nervousness of going. I always feel like a little of that, but reading about the deep canvassing and just really how you get so personal, I'm curious as how does that evolve when you're talking to somebody that you just meet? And it can't be every person, I'm sure, but you know, that's what I'm curious about, is how those conversations even sprout in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We, full disclosure, we have a script. Now, the script is obviously not for the personal story aspect of it, because each of us as individuals work to develop the story or a set of stories that we want to share. But we do have, but there is a real structure, and we teach to this structure. So we all open the same way. We have a rating early on. We sort of take the voter's temperature early on. We have transitions built in. And so the unknown part, so that allows us to sort of get to the point where we say, when, you know, voting for me is political, of course, but it's also really personal. And when I go to vote in November, I'm going to be thinking about people I love. And in particular, I'm going to be thinking about my mother. Da, 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 da.
Oh,
That's
okay.
one of my current. And so the structure is really, really important. We are learning to be really vulnerable and genuine at the door with our stories as a means, and the purpose of that is just to show vulnerability and to model what we hope the voter will do for us, with us, not for us, but with us. But the structure gives us, you know, the script gives us a way in, and it's the unscripted part is the interaction, of course, because as somebody said at a training yesterday, you know, the voter doesn't have 3 hours of training on their story. You know, we have trained on our story. So we, the way it works for us currently, and CTC has really blossomed this year. It's really amazing to be part of it. We've had the, sorry, I just lost the word. We're just really, really honored to have the support of the Los Angeles LGBT Leadership Lab, who really pioneered this technique, and they have been incredibly supportive. They kind of took us under their wing this spring and into this fall, and helped us go virtual. We've been phone deep. We knew phone deep canvassing. Who knew that you could do it? You can do it. We're doing it every weekend. We're going to continue to do it because there are plenty of people who do not want to be, either who are geographically distant from our current target location, which is Eastern Pennsylvania, or because of health concerns, you know, the obvious health concerns, don't want to be knocking on doors. So our training structure now is, as a coach, for instance, we do a story workshop once or twice every week in the evenings. We help new canvassers craft a story. We have a technique for that. We provide one-on-one support, and then at the canvas itself, we have kind of part 2 of the training, and we go through the script in its entirety. I mean, you mentioned being nervous about knocking on doors. I cannot say strongly enough that if you had asked me, 20 years ago, what would you be doing?
Oh.
Knocking on doors is not one of those things. I had canvassed twice for Obama and once for Hillary, and actually once for John Ossoff in order to get my sister out canvassing in Atlanta, and that was it. So before doing this, I'm not sure if I answered your question actually, but.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there was I pulled out some good quotes in
really
there
good.
that I really like, and we'll definitely be using to amplify our post-conversation follow-up. So very good.
Oh, good.
Well,
Christy, did you have a question? Yeah. Christy? Did you have a question, Christy?
Oh, actually, my question was actually answered because I did read about CTC and your experiences, and it was door to door. And I was wondering, in this situation, how are you doing it virtually? Because you're just going up to strangers on their phones, and they're actually willing to put up with that for 20 minutes. How are you doing that?
Yeah, Christy, thank you for that question. That's a great question. I'm going to just sort of elaborate a little bit and then answer that question. So by last fall, we had, as an organization, we were kind of born in Brooklyn, New York, and Manhattan. Our director is actually from Brooklyn. And we had, so by the beginning of last fall, we had geographically targeted Eastern Pennsylvania as a swing area that would be sort of reasonable pre-pandemic, reasonable distance for canvassers to travel. Not that we're all from New York. We're actually really sort of wide flung now. We were on the ground in Bucks County, Pennsylvania last fall. I think, Wes, a couple of the pictures I sent you were from a canvas in Bucks County last fall. And then we were there as late as, I think, the last Sunday in February was, until yesterday, the last time that I had canvassed in person. And I should add, because it's part of this series, on that day, I met Angela Aldis and her organizer, Selena, pardon me for not being sure about her name. They came out based on the relationship, based on this meeting through Eitan's book, meeting on the phone through Eitan's book. They came out and trained with us in Bucks on that very last day that we could canvass pre-pandemic. And that was just a really amazing and special experience for me. Angela and I canvassed together there. We were, the next canvas, we were planning to go out, and it was sometime, I think it might have been March 14th, and literally which was a Saturday, the Wednesday before, everybody was like, we can't do this. Like it was like the wave had come, but we hadn't quite seen it crash down on us yet. So through the hard work of a ton of people who I just can't even begin to name, we started experimenting with different phone banking tools, dialers, and through sheer act of will, got a phone banking, deep canvassing phone banking exercise off the ground. The first couple, I have to say, were pretty rough. The dialers didn't work. People didn't want to talk. Any number of issues. We weren't contacting the people we wanted to be contacting. But it's going strong now. We're having, and we'll, I believe, continue to have telephone deep canvassing right now it's every Saturday. I'm not quite sure what the exact schedule will be, but I can't imagine that we'll be doing less because there are really so many people who can't go out and don't want to be out. We wanted to get out. There was this real urgency of getting out early because we recognize that everybody in Pennsylvania and every swing state will be flooded with phone calls if they're not already. They, you know, starting like in 2 weeks, you know. And so, Christy, to your point of like, are people really willing to talk? Some people are, yeah. Some people are. Some people hang up immediately just upon hearing that you're not somebody they know, but and that does happen a little bit more frequently than at the door. That's my observation, because at the door, at least, you know, you're like closing the door on a person whose eyes you can see, and some people are less likely to do that. But we've had some amazing conversations. We have had people move up our scale. We have helped people to register over the phone. We have helped people to apply for mail-in ballots over the phone now that Pennsylvania has really straightened things up with that. And then as far as the in-person canvassing, I went on my first in-person canvass yesterday with my 16-year-old son, which was a really amazing experience. He helped by videotaping. This was the third in-person COVID time canvass. We have an extremely rigorous safety protocol in place. You must be tested and test negative within 7 days of being on the turf. We're taking our temperature every day. We have travel protocols. We have, it's actually hard for me to describe the logistics on the ground on the day of the canvass, but let's just suffice to say it has to do with these hermetically sealed plastic bags that have been in quarantine themselves for 3 days. So the voter, if we have to hand something to the voter, they take it out of the plastic bag, they put it in the plastic bag, we never touch, we hand out masks. I really had my eye on, sorry, I don't want to talk too much about this, but I feel like to be responsible, I just need to cover this base. I really had my eye on this. My husband feels very, very conservatively, you know, as we all should, about COVID. And in the end, we got okay with this because I was like, this is safer. This is at least as safe as, if not safer than, going to the grocery store with so many protections in place. And people were really willing to talk yesterday. It was amazing being out. It was just a really great experience.
When I think I've had the chance to do some phone banking, and it was just wellness checks, really. And I think during this pandemic, people want to talk because they're losing that social interaction. And so when they get someone like you knocking on their doors or calling them, you know, to really listen and hear their stories, people will share more often than they may have 8 months ago. So
I think so. I think so. I mean, it's still hard work. It's getting, having a stranger trust you like at that level. It's still hard work, but it's incredibly enriching and fruitful. And we registered a lot of people yesterday and got a lot of people set up with mail-in ballots applications. So.
Nice. Teresa, it looks like Teresa does not have a question, but she is there in you're in New York City, right?
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, she's muted. Oh, there you go. Thanks.
Gotta let her out of the cage.
I love it. Now, if there was a part of me, if anything, I just kind of wanted to know where you canvassed. Was it for Max Rose again, or was it for somebody different?
Thank you so much for that question. And it's interesting because we have a little bit of, since you've asked that question, I now know that we have a little bit of maybe a branding problem or something, but so we canvassed in 2018 for Max Rose because given the fact that we were based in New York City, and as you're well aware, there's not that many places we can really have an impact, but that was one race that we could because Staten Island had been Republican for so long. But no, soon after the 2018 elections, we as an organization made a decision to focus on the presidential election for this year. And so everything we're doing, of course, there'll be down ticket, hopefully, you know, sort of like the down ticket effects, but also to that point, you know, so we're working really for the presidential. That's our goal. We almost never say the candidate's name. We almost never said Max Rose's name. It wasn't part of our script. And although obviously now we have a candidate and it comes up, it's just, I mean, I gotta say this, Donald Trump made this part easy. You know, we canvass on empathy and values and personal connection. And we do say his name in the script. And if voters are confused, obviously, or low information and need guidance, of course, we start talking about the candidate. But really, what we canvass for is the Democrat. That's what we're doing. And this year it's the Democrat in the presidential election.
Okay, but keep in mind though too that it's just like I really do know Max because I also helped with his election as well. So kind of know that so kind of know that's may not be as big a branding problem as you think.
Oh, okay. Thank you for saying that. Okay, great. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. And are you working on, sorry to digress for a moment, those of you in other geographical areas, are you working on his campaign now?
I am not, but I've definitely donated, but it's just like I was thinking that I was trying to figure out like how they were possibly getting information and getting info out for him, because I know that he is up for re-election again. As well as I'm in Washington Heights, so there's also Adriano is also up for re-election as well. So you know, so it's definitely one of those things where it's like, it's also one of those things where it's like I now know these names because I've made it important for me to know who my officials are and what their names are. Right. So
yeah, great. To just say one last thing on this, and then maybe we can go broader again, is I believe that some of the people who worked with CTC in 2018, who were based on Staten Island, are now may well be working on the Rose campaign, and I'd be happy to try and connect you outside of this forum if I can. I'm not sure I'll be able to be successful at that. Thanks.
We can certainly make that connection happen. And I also know, I know Jimmy, I think, might be in the New York area too. So maybe he'll be interested. He's on the call here tonight. He just mentioned he volunteered. Jimmy, I don't know. You're in New York, right?
I'm in New York. I was just canvassing for AOC for the, I was doing this a few weeks ago too. I was canvassing with AOC for the census. Jeez.
Great.
Yeah, I was just in Sunnyside for the last 3 hours doing that. So
literally just, wow.
Really just last time I was on this call, I was actually walking back from it. I was doing census. Yeah, and there's like a whole script. I was on Reach. I was on Minivan. I've been doing all these things. And I've been in touch with CTC also. Some guy named Lauren Waybright got in touch with me.
Oh yeah, I know. I don't know Lauren personally, but I know who he is. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And I was just about to say,
come canvas with us. Help us out. We're looking for all different kinds of support all the time. So
I was just actually typing down here. You were saying something about empathy, and a few months ago, I'm a copywriter, and I was like, it's like, what are the two things that Trump doesn't do? It's not smart, and doesn't have a heart. So I just wrote this line, like smart leadership with a heart, and I've been using it for these. Actually, I was thinking of it through George Lakoff originally, like what is like some sort of thing we could have, and what you just said made sense to me. And I actually have been helping with Tech for Campaigns, which is, do you know Tech for Campaigns?
I don't. I'm sorry, but tell me about it.
They are an organization that helps state level Democrats with their websites, and I'm a copywriter. They have designers and other people basically volunteered to help develop them. I was about to post actually some of the websites I worked on. You can see some of the ideas I tried to put in there, and I definitely, going back to some of the stuff we did a few months ago with George Lakoff, I tried to throw in some ideas from him in there, but definitely, you know, smart leadership with a heart or something, you know, just any permutation of that, I think is a winning message this year, because we have dumb leadership without a heart. So,
Yeah,
so,
yes, we do.
but,
and Jimmy is part, he's mentioning Dr. Lakoff, and that's how Jimmy got involved with us, and we read his book on how to frame and make sure the word we are using correctly frames the democratic progressive message. So Jimmy, I think I put that link in there, tech for campaigns. Just verify that's the correct one. Okay.
It is, yeah. And I just put in a link. You can see one of the people I worked on. I could put some of the others in there. But I've been trying to, you know, keep the message since the Lakoff book. And I'd read Lakoff before, actually. I've been trying to find very simple messages, like, you know, like private life requires public resources, things like that. Just almost as like mantras to go back to, be able to speak about stuff with people. I know now from canvassing, it's not always so easy to just sort of focus on one thing. You have to meet people where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I have to admit that I'm not very good at like tracking the chat and having a conversation. So if those of you who are moderating would, like, if it's possible for me to have some of the links that are being posted there later, I would love to.
I'll certainly follow up.
Thank you so much. And
I know, Georgiana, you mentioned a question in there. We'll get you unmuted so you can ask that.
Sorry, I ran away from my computer for just a minute.
Oh, you're fine.
My only question was, I was wondering if maybe that people are opening the door just because New York tends to be a little more densely populated than here. I know here, anytime anybody talks about canvassing, like people literally yell at them and are like, no, you're not coming to my door. You're not, you know. And so I don't know, is it maybe just a cultural thing where like they live so close together anyway that they're like, you're pretty close to me anyway, what's the matter? Because I mean, around here we are all on maybe an acre of land or so, and I can't imagine someone going canvassing. I know there was someone in our neighborhood like handing out flyers for a security system, and people were like calling the police on them. So,
Georgiana, where are you located?
Ohio.
You're in Ohio. What part of Ohio are you in?
So it's called Canal Winchester. It's just on the southeast edge of Columbus. So Columbus is a city, but Canal Winchester is a village. So it tends to be a little more rural. And like I said, when people came a few months ago, just even handing out like pamphlets, people were like calling the police on them for coming near their house. So I could not even imagine trying to canvass.
So I guess that saddens me to hear that people are calling the police on others for that reason. But it's apparently a fact that you're experiencing. It's hard for me to speak to this exactly. As you were describing the situation, I was thinking, you know, so yes, even Staten Island is a bit more suburban and spread out than, for instance, Brooklyn or New York City. But I was also thinking about when I did go down that one time and canvass outside Atlanta. I guess it was a suburb of Atlanta with my sister. And those houses were pretty far spread out. So I might be
in regular times. It's just during COVID when people are like, "Do not come to my door. Do not be near me."
Yeah.
Like, I mean, our like even our like delivery people, like if you get DoorDash or something, they sit in the car, they put on their mask, and if they see you coming up to the door, they stop and are like, make you put on a mask if you're going to open the door for them. They want you to leave the door closed. Like, I just think people around here aren't about opening the door during COVID. I don't think generally we canvass like, you know, crazy people in regular times, but during COVID is when I was like,
I see what I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yeah. You know, I can only speak to my experience yesterday. We were in a part of Philadelphia that was fairly dense. we wore masks the whole time. People didn't seem upset that we were coming to the door. We actually are only allowed to speak to people if they put on a mask, so we offer masks, or some people came to the door with masks. So I guess it's I hear you. It's just a different dynamic at this time, and it's hard for me to speak to what it would be like in a different place. I think it must just be very place specific right now. But I didn't feel. I felt it was really It was a really successful canvas in that regard.
And New York has better numbers than we do here in Ohio right now, so that may be part of it as well. We're currently going back up the hill on cases and hospitalizations, so that may be a part of it too. Is folks in New York are feeling better about it because their rates are lower, but. Right.
Yeah. And I should say, I probably should have led this way. Like, I understand that some of you are in places where the rates are going up. And I just want to say, having lived through this in Brooklyn and New York City so early on, like, I'm sorry. It's terrifying. So I hope
keep wearing your mask. If you can't stay in, and wash your hands.
Exactly.
Well, and like here in Ohio, we actually had our positivity rate down below 2%, and then they opened all the restaurants, and so it's like now we're back up to about half of where we were at our peak. So I think it's just going to keep happening in these waves as we close things down, open things up, and well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Make sure you are taking care of yourself. And it's good to hear, Lisa, that CTC is taking very concentrated efforts to ensure a safe experience for not only you, but the individuals you interact with as well. So if you do choose to canvas, please make sure that, I liked how you said, Lisa, if you feel safer than you do at the grocery store, use that personal barometer check for you as you engage in canvassing in the next week.
Absolutely. And I should say, we have a team. I was not part of the Safety First team, but we have a team that included medical professionals, legal professionals, volunteering their time, and just really coming up with a plan that everybody felt was not only safe, but also on the conservative side of safe, but still allowed us to be out, because it's really, one of the things that's really scary to me is that Democrats don't have a lot of people on the ground right now as they would normally. So we're, I know that we alone are not filling that void. We're just trying to fill our part of it with this one particular strategy and technique.
Question for you, what is it about deep canvassing? Because you never thought you would be canvassing. You kind of mentioned that. What is it about deep canvassing that makes you want to keep going out, especially during these times right now?
That's a great question. No matter who I speak to, and this includes some, not every conversation is successful, not every conversation is smooth. Like, the humanity at the door, regardless of the political stance, people are just so much more humane in person than they are perhaps in other areas of life or in other ways of expressing themselves. And so, the short answer is the humanity at the door, being outside my bubble. I live in Brooklyn, New York. The people I love my friends, but the nuance and difference between us is pretty tiny. And that the interaction is genuine. So deep canvassing, yes, we practice our stories in advance. We hone those skills, but the essence of it is practicing enough so that when we're at the door, we can actually just really be in the moment. And when it works, it's a genuine connection to another human being. And through that connection, it's not that we're persuading them, convincing them, any of that. What we're really doing is helping that person to connect their values to their vote. So first, by having a personal kind of vulnerable connection, things just loosen up a lot. You know, all that, like, people kind of come back out of their corners. Like, I just can't, it's hard for me to think of anything that's more valuable than this for me personally. I'm not a person, if you've read anything in the book, then you know this already. You know, I have been to plenty of protests, but it's not it's not the place where I think I can give the most in life. Some people do not take to deep canvassing. There's, you know, there are different means for everybody, but for me personally, it's a human connection. And people are always surprising. Every single day, people surprise me. That's yeah, that's it. Also the people it attracts. That's another one. Really phenomenal people.
When you were talking, where I can give the most, and I think that's important to remember, because for some of us, maybe canvassing isn't what you can give to help a campaign and to interact. So, you know, because we all have our own things that allow us to participate. And so I think just also giving ourselves grace and grace if canvassing isn't something that we personally can do. So
I would also, sorry, Wes.
Nope, just finding what you can give as an individual.
Absolutely.
In politics.
I would add that with this particular organization, as with, I'm sure, many organizations, so we're built around this strategy of deep canvassing, and it's a very specific type of canvassing. But like any organization that is built around a strategy, there are so many people that are part of CTC that are doing this work, that are behind the scenes, that are not knocking on doors, that are doing all the data work, that are making sure our walk lists are the walk lists that are going to be by far the most effective, so that we can move as many people as possible. This spring, our Zoom team, we have a Zoom team all of a sudden, you know. We have interns, we have people putting together a newsletter, just so, you know, like the canvassers kind of get the glory in this, but it doesn't happen without all this other work. It just doesn't happen. You know, I can't remember if this is in the book or not, but I was on what turned out to be the second canvass ever of CTC, and our walk lists were just like crazy. It was like, go on this side of the street, I go on that side of the street, I go 3 streets over. It was challenging. It didn't really matter much to me at the time because I didn't know enough for it to matter. But, you know, we've gotten a lot better at that, and people have learned, you know, the whole team has just like learned so much. We have, a lot of brains and a lot of hard work going on.
That's cool to hear. And in the chat, I put the link to CTC's event page. So go ahead and look at that. And then you can also go to the main website just to learn more about their mission and what Lisa and others are doing as a part of it. But we're already at like 45 minutes. I told you kind of 45. And so I want to honor your time tonight. And so is there anything else you wanted to share just about your experience with CTC and deep canvassing you're more than welcome to continue to stay on for our discussion, but if you have
interesting. So yours, so you guys all stay on and you have a meeting now.
Yeah,
I wasn't clear on your structure. Great.
Yeah, we discuss. Okay. I think we're discussing chapters 13 through 16 today.
Oh, fantastic. So if I can take just a tiny bit more of your time, and I really, really appreciate that y'all wanted to hear anything I had to say tonight. If you're interested in CTC's work, so thank you, Wes, or whomever just put links in the chat. A great introduction is one of our info sessions, which I think we're doing weekly on Wednesdays, but and just something to know is that you know, like we're planned out for weeks, but sometimes it populates the website like a week in advance. So just because you don't see something 3 weeks from now doesn't mean it's not planned. It'll come up. So check back a couple times. We have, just to reiterate, we have phone canvassing going on. We have in-person canvassing going on. We train for everything. I promise, I can't promise you wouldn't be nervous if you undertake some of this work, but I can promise that we will train you in advance of some of this work. And then totally separately, if I can, so the day I walked into CTC, into that second canvas of CTC ever, I walked in with my really good friend, Amanda Aaron, who lives here in Brooklyn. And Amanda just launched this incredible action. And so I'm just gonna ask you, if you have college students in your life who might be in swing states, there's a tiny window for this initiative, but Amanda is a powerhouse. I want you to take a look at swingthevote2020.org. Amanda and company, including many people I know, have basically, a couple of us sent our older kids off to college this year for the first time. She sent her daughter to Carnegie Mellon with 10 of these packets to help other freshman college students get registered to vote in Pennsylvania, and it took off from there. She's got this incredible thing going on, helping college students, and actually, frankly, more than just college students, get registered, and then get set up for mail-in ballots if that's appropriate in swing states across the country. And it's a little tiny window of opportunity. If you know anybody who fits in that, take a look at the website. Super easy, super straightforward.
That's
So
awesome.
thank you for letting me make that plug.
Absolutely. And we'll be sure to include that in our follow-up email that you'll receive after. Hopefully I can get it out by tomorrow. Hold me accountable to it.
All right, you are held accountable.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all, really.
Thank you, Lisa.
Really
I know I will definitely stay in touch because I want to learn some more, and I have a few more questions to plug at you when you have the time to get back to me. So again, thank you so much on behalf of all of us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for everything you're doing to truly bring political power to your local community.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Have a good evening, everybody.
Really great.
Thanks. Okay, bye.
Awesome. I really enjoyed that discussion, and I'm very interested in deep canvassing, and particularly because of the power of story. And so hopefully you all enjoyed that as well. But let's just jump right into our discussion for tonight. I'm going to share the link, if you don't already have it pulled up, so that you can look at what questions we have. So I think I shared that in the chat. So if you want to follow along visually, you can certainly do so there. But every week we're going to start off with the same questions. So would love just to hear if we could have one or two volunteers that we haven't heard from in our past weeks. Why are you here tonight? What is your story? And I'll just briefly share mine to kind of give you a few thoughts as you get the courage to share your story tonight. But why am I here is I literally believe that there are so many individuals who are just yearning to find how can they truly get involved and get involved in a way that will bring power to them. And that's what really stood out as I've been reading Eitan's book and getting to hear the stories from Lisa. And last week we heard from Greg in North Carolina. And so, yeah, it's really, how can I be better at, be a better grassroots organizer to make sure that what I'm doing is really making a difference. And so that's why I'm here tonight. So who would like to share? Raise your hand or comment in the chat and we'll get you unmuted. And if we don't have anyone who wants to share tonight, that's totally fine. But as Vanessa always crackles when I say this, I'm a teacher, so silence doesn't bother me. Jimmy, thank you.
Yeah, someone's got to go. I feel like I explained myself before, but you know, why not? There's always more. I feel like you guys know that I've been canvassing a lot for AOC. I'm doing it like 3 or 4 days a week now in very, very different neighborhoods in New York City. I could just tell you a little bit about that because where I am is extremely diverse. Like I went somewhere where like I had to do everything in Spanish, and I don't really know Spanish that well. I mean, I know a little bit. I mean, I know it. I don't know it that well, but I know it enough to explain stuff. And I was today in very ethnically diverse neighborhoods where I'm making sure that I'm just making sure that everybody, you know, we were just trying to explain the census, but it also, you know, you wind up getting into deeper conversations with people. And I think the good thing about it is you just create a presence. Just simply creating a presence and have people have experiences does change their mind. I've learned that when working in advertising, sometimes just the presence of a product, of a brand, of anything, it raises awareness. It makes people feel like, oh wow, like AOC or the Democrats, they're out there, they're doing they must mean business because they're out there doing something. And so you know, I have friends who are all still just complaining on Facebook and talking about the conspiracy theories going on and whatnot, and you know, whatever. Right now social media is a cesspool of belief systems and magical thinking, but you know, like I do think like just getting to talk to people in person, having your eyes meet, you know, just sort of speaking calmly to them and just listening to what they have to say. People don't act as crazy as they would on social media because they can't. Most of those people on there are just like passing along ideas that they heard. Yep. And they're not, you know, so, and you know, I go back to 20 years ago when George W. Bush won. I had a girlfriend about 4 years later, around 2004. I met her. I used to be a cruise ship musician, little side thing about myself. And I met her. She was a singer there. And she told, and John Kerry had just lost. It was when Bush got reelected. And she said she was so sad about that. And I said, that's good. Yeah, I mean, she wasn't my girlfriend yet. We were still flirting. And then I said, well, yeah, I know it's terrible, Bush, blah, blah, blah. And she said, yeah, because I voted for him the first time. And, you know, I almost got so turned off that whatever, we dated for 2 years. She's a great person. But her mom is super right wing. And I said, why did you vote for Bush the first time? Now, granted, I know some of you are in more right-leaning states, and maybe you even were Republicans then, for all I know. But I wasn't. I mean, I was reading the People's History of the United States at the time. You know, I was 23 when that election happened. I was very politically aware, and she was the same age as me, so it just blew my mind that somebody could be that oblivious, especially someone with her values. She said, oh, well, my mom just sent me lots of emails that my mom hated Bush and she didn't like me. She hated Gore or whatever. And I said, really? That's it? She said, yeah, that's all it took for me to change my vote. So she was living in Nevada, which was a purple state. And it really bothered me that Bush at the time was president because a lot of people, they just made very uninformed choices. And maybe some people really did like him, and that's okay. If that's what they want, that's what they want. But the fact that a lot of people are voting because of something their mom sent them, or that, you know, they're not making really strong informed choices. They're not speaking to people who can really give them a lot of good feedback and just maybe calmly talk to them about stuff. I think is important. So that's what I liked about also doing the Obama campaign in 2008. He actually instructed us to speak from the heart every day when we went out there. And I wonder if some of you did that, but anyway, yeah, so get out there, do something. I mean, there's 50 days left. There's probably tons of opportunities. Just anything really, even just anything that is slower than a meme that just got sent, that you just saw on Facebook. Yeah. That stuff is addictive, and it gets into your subconscious. I mean, we're trying to do that too, but there are better ways around this. So I don't know. I'm still thinking of Lakoff a lot, and I like this book that we're reading too. So anyway, I don't know if that answers the question why I'm here, but I hope that it says something.
No, I really liked what you just bringing a calmness to politics. And I think that we have that opportunity, and even amidst a pandemic, we still can do that in various different ways. We're gonna jump to, I'm not gonna go through all the questions because we got about a little over 15 minutes, but for chapter 13, you know, and Lisa also mentioned how for her, protest just wasn't what she felt like she could give to politics. And so just wondered, does anyone want to share an experience about protesting, and particularly one that was more strategic versus cathartic? That would be awesome if someone had an experience like that. Liz.
During the first Gulf War, with my job, like we would take students for a Holy Week trip to Washington, D.C. and stay with a community for creative nonviolence. And we would do volunteer service work with the homeless. But some of our actions going on were, we had a field of white crosses for every American life lost in the conflict in front of the White House, probably before the lawn was fenced off. But the park police said that we had to always have people there with our crosses so that, so that if they were left unattended, they would be removed by park police and trashed. So we signed up in shifts just to go hang out in groups, you know, 'cause it's a big city. And so I slept on a steam grate one night like a homeless person and guarding the crosses. And I even tried begging some of the very important people that were walking by going to the White House. So that was kind of fun. And we also went one day out to the Pentagon and had a silent protest with peace cranes, you know, the origami folded paper and big banners and things. And basically we had a silent protest asking for, give a bomber for the homeless. And, you know, those multi-billion-dollar bombers, you know, could go a long way in taking care of domestic needs. And I felt like our silent protest was very effective because sometimes silence speaks louder than words. They got our message. You don't have to yell and chant and scream and gin up the energy and come off like an enemy. Just respectfully, silently standing there, letting your banners say your message and your physical presence being a witness of there are people who care about this, I found to be very moving. And I think that's the most interesting protest experience that I've ever been involved in.
Awesome.
The White Cross field was not cathartic for us. It was keeping it in the face of the White House, how many Americans were dying in this conflict. And so I feel like it applied some pressure. It wasn't just for us to feel better about speaking our minds or whatever.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. And I really like, I liked what you said, silence can be very powerful. And there's many ways to protest. And so I like that, especially as we get this whole idea of and labels being thrown at our current protests going on in our country. And there's many ways to protest and it looks differently. And that's the beauty of our country, is our right to protest in different ways. I believe, Jana, is it right? We have Jamel next.
Mel?
Yeah, if there's, can you hear me?
Yep.
So if there's time, I'll tell two stories because they kind of juxtapose, and I'll try to be quick about them. But and both of them relate actually, going way back, because it's been a long time since I've protested, and part of that is I don't protest much these days. As a government, I'm in government anyway. So this goes back to the days of the first Intifada, and I was in law school at the time, and Palestinian students very upset, and there was some fundraising event for I think United Jewish Appeal or something. I can't even remember the name of the group. And so it was at a hotel, and this was at the height of the Intifada. And so the group was just there and, protesting and yelling and screaming, completely cathartic, not at all useful, clearly not at all useful. One of the things that happened during that period, the different student groups within the law school will have their bulletin boards. And so the Jewish Law Students Union, fine organization, had a bulletin board, and it's about Jewish law students, et cetera, et cetera. But I think during the Intifada, it became, it became kind of a pro-Israel board. And I was like, well, hold on, if you're going to talk about Israel, talk about different things. So little me took a couple of posters of Palestinian kids behind barbed wire, and I kind of put them all around the board. And this was considered a very aggressive, violent, this was very disturbing. And nobody could believe who could have done this. And my Jewish roommates were like, they're like, you did that? This was absolutely insane. And they were torn down. So I just had like a ream of them, and I kept putting them up. And then I put a letter up, that basically said, hey, if you're going to talk about Israel, talk about it both ways. There is a conflict there, and that got torn down, and everything gets torn. Eventually, President of Jewish Law Students Union said, what do you want? And I just said, just take one of these pictures of these kids and put it on your board. And she did, because and the whole point was to make a connection and to have people just recognize. She got in trouble with her co-president and stuff like that. But I think that the whole, when I compare the two things, one was a completely useless, cathartic thing. The other was much more strategic, and the goal was begin a dialogue. Have people recognize, some of the issues that are there. And I've always thought of that, when I cathartic and strategic, think a little bit, are you really actually able to deliver a message and have somebody think something differently? That's what you should be shooting for, in the strategic protest. Nothing necessarily wrong with cathartic, but if it doesn't do any good, that's how I feel about protests generally. I think I've shown up at a couple of the bigger marches out of solidarity, but I'm not a big fan of them.
Thank you for sharing, Jamel, and kind of what you alluded to. I put a link to an article I just read from my Atlantic magazine this month, and the individual talks about how one benefit of protests and why they work is because it sparks that dialogue, and it gets people to have conversations they previously wouldn't have. And I think we can look at the Black Lives Matter protests throughout our country. We are now talking about that. Politicians are talking about Black lives and why they do matter, and how we can how we can revamp policy to ensure that it reflects that stance. And so, yeah, so I really enjoyed that story. And thank you for taking that courage to do it, because I'm sure as you conversed with your Jewish friends, there were some tense but necessary conversations.
Somebody even took this stuff to the dean, and the dean was like, he said, "What? He's like, I don't see any problem with this. Guy's just trying to say something." So it was interesting.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. Tracy?
Oh, I was in college in 1980 when the Iranian hostage crisis started. And there were a couple situations that kind of juxtaposed, kind of like Jamal was saying. We had a teach-in with Iranian students explaining how the Iranian Revolution came about, how the secret police was violating people's civil rights. And it was fine as far as it went, but when the hostage crisis started, there was this fraternity group called Sick Sick. There was like a spirit group. They were around the campus putting up stupid posters about it. And they just did this whole anti-Iranian hatred campaign going on. And it just turned the whole thing on its ear, and no one was talking to each other after that. That was my first encounter with protests on either side. Kind of left a bad taste in my mouth.
Okay. Yeah, and just curious, like as that put a bad taste in your mouth, was there some dialogue that was able to happen, or?
The teaching started that, but when everything shifted with the hostage taking, no one wanted to listen to anybody anymore. It was just Iranian students were trying to protect themselves, and the fraternity idiots in the Sick Sick group were doing their thing. So.
Darn. Well, hopefully though, that's what I'm interested in learning about. Jimmy, I know, just posted a link to a book. I think, potentially signing up for training sessions with Changing the Conversation, we can learn more about those skills on how to truly engage in those difficult conversations and still find a way to.
Genuine opportunity lost is what it was.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Tracy. So we're almost to that 8:45 mark, but really enjoying this conversations. One question I wanted to jump to was question 4 in chapter 14. And I was personally reflecting and digging on this because building bridges, we are a values-based grassroots organization, and we really believe in talking about values when we talk about politics. And Eitan mentions in that chapter on how voters who connect issues to fundamental values, moral values, are distinct in that they do not desire to compromise on an issue. And so I was just reflecting on that and thinking, okay, is that true about me personally? Being someone who believes in the power of values and how values do drive my view on politics, has that led me to become less willing to compromise? And just kind of reflecting. So I'm just curious, I'm sharing my personal thoughts, and I kind of want to hear what you all thought as you hopefully read chapter 14 and that issue of connecting issues to values and making yourself potentially less compromisable. Thoughts from the group? Jamel?
I thought it was interesting. What I felt was that just because you tie something to some fundamental values, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't compromise without compromising your values. So I don't think it's when I read that, I didn't think it was necessarily a given that just because you connect something to your values, you can't compromise. If you're just rigid, whether it's based on values or not, some people just don't want to compromise, and I mean, they're and I don't think it really has much to do with, they might say that it has to do with their values, but maybe it's just a certain amount of digging their heels in. Maybe it makes them feel like they're sticking to their values. But I look for political leaders who can make tough choices, who can make the right compromises, but I don't think that I don't think that that means that they are compromising their values. It's a compromise is a strategy. It's not a sellout. I mean, you can maintain your values. So that's how I responded when I read that chapter.
Thank you for sharing. Stephen, I see your hands raised, and then we're going to go to Teresa.
Hey, when I think about that, what I feel is that issues connected to values seems just normal, but some people, including people who are like very ideologically in my circle, have sort of connected values to a particular politician, like a particular candidate in the primaries. And that I feel like it's very true there, that once there's sort of like, this candidate is the one with the good values, then all the compromising falls apart, and solidarity with other near neighbors even falls apart.
Thank you for sharing. I can see that in my circles of people who supported the same candidate, and then also with those who didn't. And yeah, that's really good. I really like that. Thank you for sharing. And good to have you joining us. Thanks for joining us. Teresa, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me it's a little different. It just kind of depends, because of course my big issue is women's issues in regards to their health and the right to govern how they control pregnancy or not, kind of thing. And so to me, there's a part of me that goes, well, what would the compromise be? Because you've already taken so much away from the option. So if you want to take this away, then what's the compromise? To me, the compromise would be sex education for everyone, regardless of where they are, public discussions and seminars on it, public commercials on sex education and why it's important, free birth control, kind of thing. To me, those would be compromises, but I don't think that that's where the other side would meet. Mm-hmm. Because their side is thinking, but my moral compass says that you shouldn't have sex. And my moral compass goes, it's a primal urge. Like, it is the most primal part about us. Why is it we know nothing about it? So then it becomes like, there's a part of me when it says compromise, like, okay, but what are you bringing to the table? If you're taking everything away from the option, I don't understand where the compromise can even begin.
Well, and I think as you just spoke, what my initial reaction is to truly compromise, like healthcare, for example. That is a topic that voters really care about. And we can't even compromise on the issue of healthcare because there's nothing out there to compromise on besides taking healthcare away. That's not compromisable. The only way to compromise is how are we getting more people healthcare? But that's a value. And sometimes I wonder, that's really a value difference? I don't know if Republicans necessarily want more people to have healthcare. So I don't know, that I'm responding to what you said, because that's where I am as I'm processing through all this. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I don't know, that is my biggest thing that I've landed on as we progress to that. Yeah. And Stephen, how do you leave swing voters? How do you leave swing voters feel like you are a compromising person, even if you have nothing left to compromise on? Yeah, and that issue of a woman's body, because we view it as progressives, that's a freedom issue. That's a value. The value is freedom. And women are not free if they do not get to choose how their own bodies, what they can do with their own bodies. So yeah, I don't know. And we don't have to have the answers tonight, but as you think, hopefully we can discuss that next week as well, because it is 8:47 my time here in the central time zone over in Omaha, Nebraska. So I do want to honor our time. I got some things I got to do so I can teach my students effectively as possible tomorrow. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, just so you all can know. I have some good action things lined up for this week. So please, please, please check that email. But if you want to get involved with building bridges, we definitely have some opportunities for you, but beyond just discussing in a book club. We have our Bridges to the White House group, which meets every other week, and they're passionate about helping elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So you can get to know how you can be a better grassroots organizer. On Wednesdays, we do relational organized training. Similar, it's about telling your story and how to use your story to really make a difference as you talk politics with your immediate circle, family and friends. Thursday, we're doing an encore. We had a 3-week grassroots discussion series led by Cass. It received a lot of attention. We're even getting county Democratic county parties reaching out to us to do this training. So we're doing an encore event on Thursday if you want to learn about how to counter disinformation, because there is a lot of it. Friday is a happy hour where we kind of, again, a little conversation about how to talk politics with people who do not agree with you or simply do not care, because that is a large part of the voting demographics. We also have some days of action. Tuesday night, we watch movies. Tomorrow, we're watching The Knight's Tale as we write postcards. On Fridays, we work with Vote Forward and their big send to writing letters to swing voters. Saturday, Liz, who's on the call tonight, she leads a Saturday morning hangout where you can write postcards and letters. And then we do that on Sunday as well. And we'll eventually have to turn to phone banking and text banking because time will run out for us due to the postal service issue and whatnot. So tons of opportunities 4 times a week. And give us a follow on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. So follow us there if you're on there. And then you can go to our website, buildingbridgesforamerica.com or .org to learn more about us. So hopefully, as I was quickly rattling all that off for you, Vanessa, awesome. I appreciate you as always. I'm trying to get back to my screen. Stop sharing. There we go. So yeah, so hopefully we will see you around next week for our book club. I'm hoping to have another guest for us. Otherwise, I think we'll have more time to discuss because I think we got some things we can continue the conversation on. But we also hope to see you at one of our other events. So thank you so much. Oh, yes, thank you, Jana. Happy hour is every other week. So please sign up. I will include this in your follow-up emails because there were a lot of good links tonight and it's hard to stay focused and also browse the interweb at the same time. So thank you all so much. It was so good to see you all, and I hope to see every one of you next week. Have a good night.